who is favored to be the first name called.
Cam Ward.
Cam Ward, number one, seemingly the thing.
Yeah.
To the Titans.
He reminds me of Patrick. He reminds me of Mahomes with how he can be unconventional, throw the football from all different kinds of weird angles.
Tennessee, if they end up going with Cam, they're going to get a special guy.
Not as a question, not with a hint of uncertainty. They said it the way eulogies are spoken over graves that no one plans to visit again. Cold, final, absolute. The kind of proclamation that drips with resignation, not analysis. The oil had dried in the machine, the gears had locked, and the once revered symphony of chaos that had defined Tennessee football, the thundering footfalls of power runs, the brutal poetry of goal line stands, the roars that once cracked the skies above Nissan Stadium. All of it, they said, had dissolved into dust and disappointment. Then, in the quiet of an offseason where the world had stopped watching, he arrived, Cam Ward. Not with headlines, not with fanfare, not with a marketing campaign to paint him as a savior. He didn't need any of that. He stepped into Tennessee the way roots creep beneath the earth, unnoticed, slow, but destined to change everything. And from the very first moment, the air shifted, not because he was loud. Cam Ward is not loud. He doesn't posture, he doesn't preen, he doesn't pound his chest or feed the cameras like so many do, but he carries something far heavier than hype. He carries command, presence, gravity, a stillness that demands attention the way the sky does before a tornado. You don't hear it at first, but you feel it deep in your chest, in your gut. At Minicamp, the signs were subtle at first, 17 straight completions, but it wasn't the number, it was how they came. Bullet passes threaded through narrow windows, perfect reads, calmness under pressure, a foot barely off the grass, a shoulder turn, a flick of the wrist, and suddenly the field tilted. Teammates noticed, coaches leaned in, even the cynical media began to write with a hesitance they hadn't shown in years. Cam Ward didn't just throw footballs, he cast spells. He made the field his. Veterans who'd been through the grind for a decade began nodding quietly to themselves. Linemen widened their stances. Receivers ran their routes just a little sharper because this quarterback, he saw everything. If you cut your route short by a yard, he knew. If you hesitated off the line, he adjusted mid-throw. Cam's mind wasn't just processing, it was orchestrating. And slowly, silently, something began to reawaken. This wasn't just a quarterback stepping into a role. This was a leader walking into a broken cathedral and picking up the shattered pieces of stained glass. And one by one, he began fitting them back together. This is a man who had been ignored, shelved, doubted by scouts, analysts, executives who looked for flash and overlooked fire. Passed up in the draft not because he lacked talent, but because he didn't play the media game. He didn't feed the machine, so they turned away. But Cam Ward had been watching, listening, collecting every slight, every rejection, not to weep over it, but to build something with it. Every "he's not ready" became a brick. Every "he'll never be a starter" became mortar. And by the time he stepped into Tennessee's locker room, he wasn't trying to prove them wrong. He had already done it. And Tennessee was starving for that kind of spirit because 2024 had been a slow motion implosion. The offense had become a series of stalled drives and broken promises. The defense, once violent and defiant, now bent like thin metal under pressure. The identity, once forged in blood and thunder, had become unrecognizable. Fans had stopped hoping, not because they didn't love the team, but because heartbreak over time becomes a kind of armor. But Cam Ward cracked that armor. Not with speeches, not with slogans, with example. He showed up early, stayed late. He called out mistakes, even his own. He studied tape like it was scripture. In scrimmages, he spoke just enough. In huddles, he looked everyone in the eye. And slowly, players began to lift their heads again. The fire returned, not overnight, but moment by moment. And the culture, it shifted. This wasn't a team trying to salvage pride. This was a team reborn. Suddenly, the receivers were diving for catches they used to jog toward. The linemen, once criticized for being soft, started punching holes in defensive fronts like they had something to prove. Because they did. Because now there was someone behind them who made every snap feel meaningful. The linebackers barking again. The secondary question marks swarming again. The energy wasn't fabricated. It wasn't desperate. It was authentic. And still, the league looked away. Even as the temperature shifted in the locker room, even as something raw and undeniable began to pulse beneath the turf at Nissan Stadium, the cameras turned elsewhere. The networks plastered their segments with the same familiar faces, the safe storylines, the same superstar quarterbacks who sold jerseys and headlines. They chose to orbit the planets already burning bright, ignoring the quiet gathering of energy in the heart of the South. To them, Tennessee was still a ghost, a shadow moving along the edges of relevance. To them, Cam Ward was a footnote. Talented perhaps, but untested, unproven, unimportant. But that's the mistake they always make, isn't it? They confuse silence for absence. They confuse patience for weakness. They forget that the strongest storms aren't born in chaos. They are forged in stillness, in the quiet buildup, in the friction between doubt and faith. The storm building in Tennessee never needed their approval. It didn't need the national spotlight or a viral clip to prove it was real. It only needed time. And Cam Ward, he has time in abundance. And not just time. Focus, the kind of razor-sharp clarity that comes from being counted out, from being told you're not good enough, not fast enough, not big enough, from watching others get crowned before the race even begins. And what that does, what it always does to the right kind of man, Akaiti, is it turns the pain into pressure. And pressure? Pressure creates quarterbacks like this. Cam doesn't just walk with confidence now, he walks with conviction. He walks like a man who's had to carry his dream through silence, across deserts of doubt, and past the wreckage of every no he's ever been given. And Tennessee, they feel that in every snap, in every command he gives at the line, in every second he spends after practice, not for the cameras, but for the cause. Because this isn't about one man reviving a franchise. This is about a man and a city rediscovering each other. Because Nashville remembers. Always has. Always will. It remembers the bitter losses, the near misses, the heartbreaks that left the city staring out over the Cumberland River in silence, wondering when their moment would come. It remembers Music City miracles and playoff battles. It remembers grit, pain, glory, all tangled together in the soul of this team. And when Cam stepped into the building, not just as a quarterback, but as a reflection of that same soul, something ancient stirred. The kind of belief that can't be bought. The kind of fire that isn't sparked by marketing campaigns or hype videos. The kind that comes back to life when the right man breathes into it. And now, the stadium no longer echoes with resignation. It thrums with anticipation. The stands, once filled with fans bracing for disappointment, are starting to lean forward again. The city, once weary from waiting, is starting to wake up. Slowly, carefully, but undeniably. Every pass Cam throws in camp, every 2-minute drill he commands, every nod of respect from a veteran who's seen it all, it adds to the storm. A storm that doesn't scream for attention, it demands it. And Cam Ward, he's no longer just the underdog with a chip on his shoulder. He's the axis, the pulse, the lightning bolt that turns cloud into chaos and silence into noise. He's not a chapter, he's the rewrite. The league doesn't see it yet, maybe they won't until it's too late. But it's coming, and those who've been paying attention, they already know what's about to happen. Because this is no longer about playbooks and stats. It's about identity, about Tennessee reclaiming its voice. It's about redemption, not just for a team, but for every fan who refused to walk away, for every kid wearing a Titans jersey who got laughed at, for every Sunday that ended in heartbreak. It's about the fight that never left. It's about a city whose soul couldn't be silenced, whose pride couldn't be erased. So if you still think the Titans are finished, if you still believe they're nothing more than a name on someone else's journey to glory, a stopgap, a stepping stone, an easy W scribbled in ink months before the kickoff, then you've misunderstood what's happening in Tennessee. You've mistaken the silence for surrender. You've mistaken the lack of noise for the absence of movement. You've missed the weight in the air, the shift in rhythm, the calm before something unstoppable breaks loose. Because this isn't just a team trying to survive anymore. This isn't a franchise desperate to hold on to what used to be. This is a reckoning, a resurgence with teeth. A second wind that doesn't just hope, it hungers. The Titans aren't trying to be remembered. They're preparing to make you forget every team you once feared. And if you think this is just smoke, then stand in it long enough and you'll start to feel the heat, because something is building in Nashville. Something cold, sharp, inevitable. It's in the cadence of footsteps in the locker room, in the gleam of helmets lined up under storm gray skies. It's in the unified breath of men who have decided they're done being doubted. Cam Ward didn't come here to participate in someone else's season. He came to rewrite the story, to take the overlooked, the dismissed, the underestimated, and turn them into the most dangerous version of themselves. He's not here to manage the clock. He's not here to throw pretty passes for Instagram clips. He's here to carve paths through chaos, to deliver pain in silence, to make defenders doubt their angles and coaches question their schemes. He's the kind of quarterback who doesn't ask the world for space. He takes it. The kind who turns Sunday into a battlefield, not a broadcast. The kind whose calm presence in the huddle makes grown men feel like soldiers about to charge into history. So if you haven't noticed, if you haven't felt the shift under your feet yet, if you're still brushing off Tennessee as yesterday's news, then you haven't been paying attention. Listen again. Not with your ears, with your instincts, with the part of you that feels danger before it arrives. That prickling at the back of your neck, that's not wind, that's pressure, that's warning. That's not a whisper crawling out of Nashville. That's thunder rolling in from the deep south, thick, slow, and full of fire. And Cam Ward, he's not just the eye of the storm, he is the force behind it. The fury wrapped in calm, the lightning that doesn't flash, it strikes. And this fall, the league won't just hear him. They'll fear him.